You ever think like jazz is just a bunch of random wrong notes?
Is it important to learn classical etudes for jazz players? And what do we actually gain from this? And please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong or if you think I'm wrong. So because classical etudes are written down, there's been a lot of thought into the process of writing melodies. And thus when the process of producing this music has taken a long time or very thoughtful process, the melodic lines are very strong. So should you learn classical etudes because of the beautiful melodic lines, or are written down or transcribed jazz solos just enough for us? So in this video I would really like to discuss if we as jazz players can learn anything from classical etudes. And I would really like your opinion on this. Is this a yes or a no? And I would like the why. So these exercises in the classical clef saxophone book, we know these. It's just scales up and down. And yes, of course we need to practice this as jazz players too. What we need for this clef scale exercise to become really useful to us is context. When we are playing jazz, we need to add the scales into the context where we need to play them. So when we do this with this clef exercise, adding the chords to the scales, it's actually really useful, but not something new we do not know already. And further, is the exercise a little complex to add to your music when you don't have the context immediately. So let's look a little bit deeper. Now this exercise is really fun and on a complete different level. And this is actually where classical exercise comes to their right. The material is rather simple. It's a scale going up and thirds going down. But what's happening here is really interesting. The scale is changed for every 2 bars. This means we're actually playing over a progression like in jazz. Check this out. And as you know, I'm a really big fan of thirds in the scale, so it adds the scale and the thirds in the scale. So this exercise I would actually call a workable etude. So what's an etude actually? I just want to read what an etude is according to the internet. Piece of music intended to be played to improve a musician's technical skills. The word comes from the French of study. So the etudes are made to study a technical skill. So the purpose of the etude is clear, but there are more to it. So many etudes are really beautiful classical pieces of music. So the composers of etudes have put some thought into it and actually made really pretty melodies. So very often when I hear etudes or written down melodies, they are much better put together than an improvised solo. And here I'm not talking about the improvised solo of the top performers in the world, because those improvised lines are almost like written out music. So I'm talking about most improvisers on average. So when we're looking at the etude again, we can see that Clauset wants to practice the scale and he wants to practice the scale in thirds. We're adding this into the music over 2-5-1 and it can sound like this. So try making your own etudes by the material you find in already existing etudes. In the lesson manual PDF you can download from Patreon, I have written down all these classical etudes and made them into licks that you can use immediately in your playing. You can see the direct link between the etude and how you put it into your music. The download link is in the description. When I would start playing a jazz standard, I would probably start playing the chords like this. But training this is not melodical at all and it's not exciting to play in any way. So getting inspired by the melodic lines of classical etudes is definitely a thing, I think. So this Russia book I once bought when I was starting playing saxophone. I basically bought anything that had a saxophone on it, books and CD cases and record covers. So this book, are these exercises worth playing as a jazz player? So these exercises train the minor and major thirds over the whole range of the saxophone in chromatic patterns. Mostly I would think that these patterns are something for heavy metal guitar players. Maybe not for me, but let's look a little bit further. A little bit further in the book there's this exercise playing dominance in inversions. It's a really nice exercise and I actually like playing these dominant chords because we use dominant chords when we're playing jazz. But if you can't see the application right away, it's difficult to use. I've made this lick with this exercise. But I must must say that the exercise takes some thorough thinking before I can apply it. And this really demands that you're taking this exercise and really playing it a lot of times before you can actually use it in your music, and you have to think thoroughly about where you want to put this exercise in your music. So maybe just taking the Coltrane 1, 3, 4, 5 patterns and put into your music is a much better idea. I might have told you that before I played saxophone I played classical piano. Once this led me to play these Hanon exercises. The Hanon exercises are probably known to all the piano players out there. And some of these exercises are really great, beautiful and well composed etudes. So the first Hanon exercise is this. The exercise is going through the scales in a very melodic way. Let me explain. The first part of this exercise, C, E, F, G, A, reminds me very much of the Coltrane pattern 1, 3, 4, 5, aiming for that target note, the A, and then going down the scale again. And when you find beautiful melodic exercises like this, you can apply them directly into your playing. This Hanon book is the gift that keeps on giving. To help you out, you do not have to do all this research in all these classical books yourself. In the lesson manual PDF you can download on Patreon, I have taken the essential exercises that are best to use in jazz, written the exercise down and turned them into licks that you can use immediately in your playing. The lesson manual PDF download link is in the description. So I'm just flipping the page of the Hanon book, looking at page 2, and check out this beautiful exercise. What I really like in these piano exercises is the focus on the target note. The movement of the triad up and going directly into the target note in bar 2. Instead of just using the scale going straight to the target note, you get this beautiful melodic line moving into the target note. And making lines with this new Hanon material is super easy too. And then there's a downside. I actually flipped through 5 pages and then I first found something. So there are definitely exercises I cannot use. I'm skipping those pages because I do not think that the melody is that beautiful, and I think they're difficult to add to my jazz phrases. But I reached exercise number 7. As I said earlier, I love thirds in the scale, so of course I think this exercise is amazing. But there are other things to it. Again, the focus on the target note is super clear here. Every one bar phrase is focusing all on hitting that target note in the second bar. And again, any part of this line can be used in your jazz phrases directly. So why should you play classical exercises? I really like that the good classical exercise has a lot of focus on target notes. In a very melodic way, the classical etudes leads into these target notes using beautifully melodic phrases. The purpose of the etude is of course gaining level in technical skills. But when the technical exercise is disguised as a beautiful melody, I really like it. So should we stick to playing transcribed solo like this beautiful solo by Coltrane on Oleo? I really think that one does not rule out the other. When we are playing transcribed solo, you get amazing timing, you get amazing phrasing, and you get great sound, and you get all these beautiful jazz lines that you can use in your playing. But the classical etudes do other things. The classical etudes actually focus on one problem at a time or one issue at a time. And throughout the etude you are forced to drill this one part. And because of the melodic nature of the etude, you also train melody and harmonic movement. The problem with the classical etudes, adding them into your jazz playing, is you really need to take some time looking at etudes and playing etudes that are probably not that useful, finding out if you can use them in your music. So please let me know what you think in the comments below. In the lesson manual PDF on Patreon, I have put the most essential exercises. The best classical etudes for you to practice. Further, I have of course developed new licks from the etudes that you can add directly into your playing. Download the lesson manual on Patreon, the link is right here. The perfect continuation in this classical exercise talk is this video. The complete opposite, why you should learn all solos by ear and why this trains you the best to play jazz. Featuring 2 of my favorite players, Dexter Gordon and John Coltrane. Play music, have fun.